Hello, everybody. Oh,
Hello.
that sounds so pretty. I don't know how well anyone else can hear it, but a friend of the project made us some unminding music. So we'll play it at the end, but wow, it's so pretty. I'm just going to be quiet to see if we can still hear it.
Yeah, it's our theme tune. Somebody made us a theme tune. Can you believe it?
Well, he messaged, and I've been sort of friends with him for a little, not that long actually, and he messaged and said, really love what you guys are doing, and I'd like to sort of make a. He actually said sort of jingle, and to me, jingle is kind of like. I was thinking, God, what could it sound like? I was thinking, do we need something like that? And it didn't. It took him maybe a couple of hours, and he emailed it to me, and I burst into tears when I heard it. I was like, wow, if I was to put unminding into music, it would sound like that. And that's obviously what he's taken from it, which is really, really amazing.
Very special and very beautiful. And we're going to play it in full at the end. So if you're here to the end, we're going to finish and play it again. But yeah, I was kind of blown away when I heard it. I was like, that is so pretty. So lovely. So yeah, so every week we'll start with the theme tune, and then it gives people a chance to get into the chat as well before we begin, which is always a good thing too. So how are you, Jem?
I'm doing well. I was really well up until about an hour ago, and now I'm all right again. I'll tell you about that in a minute because it's quite funny and it's quite in sort of conjunction with what we're talking about tonight. But yeah, I'm great. I've had a really calm day, and then the last sort of hour's been a bit hectic because I've been trying to get ready for this and trying to be calm, but things weren't working. It's just unreal. But yeah, other than that, I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I've had an interesting day, and I'll probably talk a little bit about that when it's my turn to talk a bit more. But yeah, it's so usually I generally feel really okay, and obviously I teach this, and I sit in a quite a good space of mental health and well-being. And today I had one of those days where I just felt a bit off. I felt a bit anxious, and it was just a really interesting, but we will dig into that because I think it's really important to kind of share things like that and show that we are still human. Even when we understand something, we're still going to get off days, and just to look at how natural it is for us to feel that, and what it means to not attach anything to a feeling. And that's what we'll go into. But Gem, I want to go into yours a little bit more, if that's okay, because I thought that was quite funny, because Jem had this idea that tonight she had this evening where she could actually, she was on her own, she wouldn't have any disturbances, and it would be a really peaceful night to do this chat. And actually, some things happened that kind of made that not quite true. So, Jem.
I'm a bit embarrassed. Well, I'm not embarrassed, but I'm gonna show my true self for that moment. And there's also something else that's happened in the last 5 minutes, which I'll tell you about in a second. But oh Christ! So basically, well, it started was I couldn't find my headphones, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but I've never done a spaces without headphones. Not these ones, but any space. I think it's really important to have the microphone, and I've never tried it without. So I was like, God, okay, looking around the whole house. I've been on a mission the last few days, tidying and putting everything in its place. So I've ripped everything back out, and I'm like, okay, great. Can't find my headphones. So I go into the car, look in the car, and then I send a voice note to Molls and said, oh, I don't know what to do. I can't find my headphones. We're starting in 45 minutes. What do you do? And then she's like, I've never used headphones. And I just like, okay, I don't want to swear too much. Like, bloody hell, okay. I'm laughing, and then I'm like, okay, let's not worry about the headphones. But I didn't have time to cook what I wanted to cook, and I really wanted a chicken burger from my chicken burger shop. So I called them. They always know what I have, and I just said, can I have it in 5 minutes? They're like, yep, no problem. So I was in the car, and I pulled out of the driveway, and where I live is kind of it's in a town, but it's quite sort of back roads, and I always take the back roads because I know how to get to places quickly. But I pulled out, and the car that was in front of me was a brand new big Jeep, 71 plate, but it was driving 10 miles an hour, we're in 30 mile an hour zones, but this was just a bit ridiculous. So I waited till we got to the end of the road, and I can't go a different way because it's a one-way system. And I flashed him a couple of times, and I thought, oh God, how is this happening? Like, I'm late, running late already. I haven't got my headphones. And he was going in exactly the same way as me. And I flashed him another couple of times, and I thought, this, I should be there and home by now. And I thought, is this a joke? Is someone like pranking me? Like, and so he indicated right. I had to go right, but I thought, fuck this. I'm going to go around the other way. I'll still get to where I need to get to before he will. So as he pulled out, I'm like, great. And then as I go to pull out, I stall the car. Now, I've never stalled a car in my life. I'm embarrassed to say this because I take huge pride in the fact that I'm a great driver, and I'm not going to be sexist and I'm not going to say any jokes, but I was taught to drive when I was 6 or 7 years old. So I passed my driving test within a second because I knew how to drive. I've raced go-karts. I've driven for years, for long distances with big jobs that I've had. And it's the first time I've ever stalled, and there was a car behind me, and they beeped at me like, what the fuck are you doing? And I felt so embarrassed. I felt myself, I'm heating up now thinking about it, but I just could not. And I had to take a minute and just thought, how on earth has that happened? I've never stalled a car in my life. And obviously it's something to do with the fact that I wasn't aggressive, but I was just like, oh, for fuck's sake, come on. But I was so calm, waiting, like ready for this tonight. And then the headphones and then the drive. And it's just, how did that happen? Like, I know that thought creates everything, but I got so tied up for a minute, so much so that I forgot how to drive. And yeah, it's just, I came back home. We spoke quickly, and I said, I still can't find my headphones, but you've never used them, so what am I worrying about? And then just as we start the call, the kitten walks up to me with my headphones in her mouth, and I'm like, unbelievable. But the final thing that's just happened is I've just gone into the kitchen, and she's on the work surface. So she's, within the last 5 minutes, has learned how to jump onto the work surface. We got 4 or 5 weeks ago, so she's probably only 12 weeks. She's tiny, but there's nothing on the side, but now I've got that to deal with. It's like, Jesus Christ. So anyway, that's my whinge. And if you could try and explain what has just happened and how I rolled over into that, it would be amazing.
Oh, so funny, yeah, because it's like we had a conversation earlier, and it was like, oh, your calm vibe, and you were like, yeah, I've got my space tonight, and like I'm going to be on my own, and it's going to be great. And then suddenly this whole creation appeared that took you out of your kind of presence into kind of a state of stress. And it was so interesting, and there wasn't really any stress there. It's again, thought is a construction, not an instruction, which is the title of this Spaces tonight. Is because thought made up a story. Thought made up that you needed the headphones, and the panic of that you couldn't do a Spaces without headphones, and then it made up the driving was looked really real, like that person in front of you going slow like a problem. I mean, they were just a person in front of you going slow. And then you stalled, and it all becomes very real in the moment, because thought creates the feeling overtakes us, so the irritation or the stress becomes so real that you don't really give thought a chance to be seen as thought. It just all becomes this kind of moment that is consuming, and you're angry or you're stressed or you think, oh, what am I going to do? And none of it's true, because the moment you drop out of the thought looking like an instruction, more to seeing its true nature, that it's only ever making shit up, that suddenly you're like, oh, okay, I could have handled that completely differently. Now, that doesn't mean that you handled it wrong, because there isn't a wrong or right in this understanding. We go back to the source of experience, but what it shows us is how easy it is to get caught up. So for me, it was this morning. I just woke up with that feeling in my belly of anxiety, or there was just something, and And it's like, oh, I just don't, yeah, what is this? And even though I teach this and I know, I have a knowing that I shouldn't apply what I see in the world to my feeling. My feeling is separate from the world. My mind will come in and grab the feeling and make it appear as if it's the world. So I woke up to this war in Ukraine. I woke up to some other things, and it just made it that, oh, okay, is it that? Is it that? And there was just this point where I went, come on, like, Molls, it's none of that. You know that this experience is coming from a thought feeling that you're having. It's coming from you. And all you're doing is attaching what it looks like to the world and trying to find a reason. Because then once you find a reason, you think you can fix it. But ultimately, you can't fix it. It's a feeling that's going to come and that's going to go. Now, it's gone now. But it was really interesting that we're constantly living in this dynamic of thought, feeling, appearing real. For Gems today, for me today, for all of you, for all of us every day. That is the nature of being human. We're always going to be having the experience of thought appearing, looking real, and then falling away. So when we say thought is a construction, not an instruction, how this is helpful is that we begin to see that what thought's doing is it's constantly telling us what it creates and what it kind of directions, or what look like directions. Now, all those directions are an idea. We don't have to follow them. But what we do is we get really caught up into believing our own thinking and thinking it's telling us the truth, and thinking that if we follow it, it's a good thing. Now, we all know sometimes we follow our thinking and it doesn't always take us to a great place. We've been better off kind of sitting back and detaching and observing thought. A great example of this today is, imagine if Putin understood that he didn't have to follow his thinking. So if we take it at face value, which I don't always with things that are going on in the world, but for the sake of this analogy, so if Putin understood that thought wasn't real, and he didn't have an ego the size of the moon, then possibly he could have reflected and think, well, I don't need to follow what my thinking is saying, because it is a construction, not an instruction. Now, that's on a really big scale. But if you think of all the little things where we follow thought where we don't need to, often we think, well, I really didn't need to do that. That really wasn't helpful. So where we come back to with this understanding is that there's a detachment and an observation of our own thinking, rather than seeing our own thinking as actual truth and something that is incredibly helpful. 98% of thought is unhelpful. That's a hell of a lot of thinking that isn't helpful. There's a hell of a lot of thinking that we don't actually have to take any notice of. And once we begin to see that, we free up a little bit of space for us to just be present in the moment, because we're not constantly on this hamster wheel of following thought, following thought, following thought. Suddenly we can be in the moment and know that all we really have to do is observe it, and it will calm, thought will go. That's what it does. 100,000 thoughts a day coming and going. That's so much thought, so much that we see, so much that we don't need to act upon, so much when we have a deeper understanding of what it is and who we are, we get to then have what looks like a choice in whether we follow thought or not. Whereas I think previously to understanding something like this, we tended to see our thought as really real and true, and follow it and see it as a direction or an instruction. So this made up nature of thought is what we're looking at here. This thought that's always creating a story, always creating the illusion of life, always creating a feeling. So for me today, the feeling came, my mind wanted to attach it to the world. I saw that I didn't need to, and I became free from it. The same for Gem. It really looked like it was headphones and people in cars, but it was all her. Couldn't have come from anywhere else. That experience had to come from her. Her reaction to the world came from her. Now, in a different state of mind, if she didn't have the spaces to get to and having a belief and ideas around that, in that moment, maybe she'd have reacted differently. but we're always up against what we think is real. We're always up against what our minds is, what our minds are creating. And they're always, always, always creating something. You know, that is the very nature of the mind. It will always create a movie. It will always create a story. So once this thinking, these thoughts come up, and we learn not to believe them, they become examined thoughts, which is a different thing. So the examined thought always passes. The believed thought sticks around. Can you see that? But the examined thought, the one that's challenged, will pass. So once we question our thinking, our beliefs and their power diminishes. Okay? That's how the power of thought, although it's always going to be powerful, how we diminish the power of the personal thinking is by examining it, by asking if it's true, by seeing if it's real. It's like, other than what I'm thinking right now, am I okay? That's such a huge question. Is thought creating my experience, or am I okay? So another, for most of us, we're not in a place that's at war. You know, if any of you are, you know, that's a very different thing. But for most of us, we're not. But we're seeing war via social media, and by maybe by a TV screen. So, you know, then it's like, what's going on there? If you're getting scared or you're getting upset because there is war, and you're not in a country where there is war, where's your feeling coming from? It has to come from you. So it would be your thinking would be creating your experience of not being okay, not your personal reality. Okay? So if in this moment our basic needs are being met and we're safe, what is wrong? It has to be thought creating the issue. Now I've done that today. You know, thought created an issue. It appeared real until I challenged it. Because actually, I'm fine. There's nothing really for me to have anxiety about in my life, even though what we're saying here is it isn't life that creates it anyway. But this is sanity, what we're talking about. This is living in the now. This is seeing thought for what it is, rather than always believing it, always being upset about it, or being freaked out about it, or thinking it's saying something that's true. So we start to see that thought feeling appears and it passes. A new thought feeling appears and it passes. It's very important for us to remember that thought and feeling are one. There isn't a separation here, okay? What you're thinking, you're feeling. And that will look like many, many things. We have so many layers of beliefs and conditionings in our personal thought. So whatever that is coming up as in the moment is how it will look. You know, there's sticky thoughts, the ones that we've believed over and over and over again. You know, we've all got those areas that really look true, and those areas that look true are just the areas where we haven't seen it as thought that isn't real. As soon as a sticky area that looks true is seen as thought that isn't real, again, it's examined, it dissolves. So in a very small way, Gemma thinking about headphones, it looked really real. As soon as she saw it wasn't, it dissolved. So her idea to come on a Spaces, she couldn't do it without headphones. And as soon as she spoke to me, I said, yeah, of course you can. Then there was no issue there. The feeling went. Well, that whole thought feeling was created by her because she had a belief. Where did the belief come from? The belief came from thought. So this is it, over and over again. Our experience is made of one thing that looks like a million different things. But the beauty of knowing it's made by that one thing allows us freedom, because as soon as we step back into the fact that thought and feeling is a creation from within, we come back to sanity, we come back to safety, we come back to being in the here and now, okay? We see that the mood isn't real, the world isn't real, that there's something that within us that is always at peace. There's a place that we can all go, and for me, it doesn't matter if you have mental illness or stress or you're completely okay. Understanding this is really important, because once you see that your experience is coming from you, you become less a victim of the world, because even somebody that's not suffering at all with their mind will still get caught up in stressful moments, will still have ideas that they think are real, will still fill in the gaps. See, this is a really important thing. The mind will always want to fill in the gaps that it's unknown. So, say you're waiting for a business call, or you're waiting for a reply from somebody that you're going out with, or there's something that someone was supposed to get in touch with you, and you put some meaning around that, and then maybe they're supposed to get in touch with you on the Thursday, and by the Friday you've not heard from them. Your mind will fill in the gaps. Your mind will fill in the space. It will make up a reason why the girl or the boy didn't call you, or why the business person didn't call you. It will say, oh, maybe it's because of this. It won't only make up one reason as well. It'll probably make up lots of reasons, because the mind doesn't like the vacuum. Okay, the mind wants to fill it in with a story. So this is what we're always up against. The intellect is always going to create. Okay, it's always going to make things up. So once we're onto that, for all of us, can you imagine how helpful it is to suddenly understand that thought isn't true, and that it will always make up stories, because that's its job. So for me, it's if I'm waiting for a call from somebody and I don't get it, and my mind begins to make up a story about that person, at some point I'll come back to sanity and realise that I'm making a story up, and I'll come back to presence, and I will see that I won't know anything until that person calls me and lets me know what's happened. This is so helpful in our work life, in our personal lives, as a mother. I've got a 20-year-old son. He goes out, and I can get in my head about, oh, he's supposed to call by this time, or he's supposed to be home, or something along those lines. If I'm in my sanity, and I'm seeing that my mind would make up a story around that, I'm okay. If I get really caught up in my mind, I can make a problem out of that. So it's like, what are we doing? When we're making a problem out of something, it's because we're believing what our mind is saying. We're thinking thought is an instruction, not a construction. So it's we get to understand things differently here. We get to see thought a bit differently. It just becomes something that's much easier to deal with. This is when we come back to, as I said, living in the now, being present, understanding our feelings a little bit differently. It's not the world creating our feelings. It's thought creating feeling over and over and over again. It's so interesting to begin to open up to this. It's so interesting to begin to see that everything that you thought might be true isn't. It can be challenging, because you have to put everything on the table with this. You can't say, oh, well, that's thought, but that area of my life, I'm not touching that. That isn't thought. Like, everything has to be made of thought here. The totality of it, the absolute, how much it encompasses all of our life. But what that encompassing does, it means that every area of our life can become freer. Every area of our life can have more light in it. We can be less of a victim in every area of our life. That's it, over and over and over again. It's like our minds are always telling us that we should be somewhere that we're not. We shouldn't be here and now. We should be over there. We should be having this. We should be getting that. We should be with that person. The mind's always doing that. The intellect is fascinating. We're always up against the intellect. That's the beauty of this as well. It's like, oh, I'm not up against the world. I'm up against my own thinking. Most of the time, yeah. That's what it is. And it's so compelling and so invisible most of the time. So what's interesting for Gem earlier, when she was really caught up, it was that the fact that it was thought was invisible. It was her life in that moment. It wasn't visible to her that it was thought until it became visible. Once she began to see it was thought, suddenly it became funny. It's like, oh, I did that thing. I got caught up. Yeah, me too. All of us do. None of us are going to be free from that. That's the nature of our experience. And this is why, when I talk about it being all-encompassing and the totality of it. This is, to me, why this is the most important conversation. It's the most important conversation because it can change everything. It challenges every part of our life. It can transform every part of our life, and it can really create the most divine awakening experiences. The most freedom that you've felt, because that freedom comes from you. You're not expecting it or relying on it from the world. You're seeing that it can only come from one place. And as we challenge thought, all these layers of belief and conditioning that I was talking about begin to fall away. They begin to dissolve. Something deeper appears. So we get to understand who we are. We get to understand that our state of mind and our thinking is always temporary. It's not who we are, and it's not who other people are. It's just a temporary illusion appearing real, and that's it. That's the essence of what this is. It's like, who are you before that state of mind appears? Who are we? Like, where is that energy of thought coming from? What does that say that we can see that thinking? It means if we can actually observe thought, we are not thought. And there's something more to us. And that is just such a beautiful exploration. That's something that's so enriching to all of us to begin to explore, to begin to see, to really reflect back on ourselves and go deeper than this illusion, go deeper than the mind that creates all the things that aren't true. The intellect is always going to do the intellect thing. It's always going to fill the spaces, fill the gaps, make up stories. We don't have to listen to it. We can be free of it. We can, and that's not always, not constantly, but just to have the understanding that we have moments of freedom from it is just the most wonderful thing. Just to understand that something deeper can always come through at any moment because you've explored it, because you've opened up to that being true, that the mind isn't always telling you the truth. And that is why this is so important for mental health. So I think it's brilliant for everybody, but the value of this understanding in the field of mental health for me is its most important area, because most mental health problems are coming from people believing that thought is true. Okay, so if you think thought creates feeling, somebody completely consumed with negative thinking that they feel is real and says something about them is going to create a really bad feeling. Okay, and then they're stuck in that because they're on the loop of negative thought feeling because they're believing it. When we come to an understanding like this and we see that actually negative thought is just thought, we don't have to apply a label to it. We don't have to say it's good or bad, wrong or right. We just observe it. Then that freedom from their own mind can come in. That relief from the incessant chatter that the mind can create and the disturbing thoughts that people can have when they're stuck in mental illness. So again, it's so powerful to begin to observe this and to see this, because again, they get to see that back to the state of mind being temporary, back to seeing that in themselves, back to having compassion for the self. When I found this, and I'd been in my head for 7 years in a bad place, like my compassion for myself was strong, because suddenly I saw that it wasn't me making bad thoughts. Bad thoughts were just coming through. And when I actually went even deeper and saw that there isn't good or bad thoughts, that's just thought. And I just because I believed something that wasn't true, I'd got really stuck there. And that freedom and that compassion that came in for me was a really beautiful thing, because I've been so hard on myself. I've been so tough with myself in that time. So again, it's always, who are we? Who are we before thought? What is thought? Is my thinking true? Is it telling me anything that's helpful? How would I feel right now if I didn't have this thinking? Would my life be great if I didn't have this thinking? And for most people, it would be true. It'd be true that life would be much better if they didn't listen to so much to the thinking that was causing them trouble. And these temporary states of mind that we find ourselves we can be open to them. We know they're going to come, but we know they're going to go. We know they're going to pass. We know that all thought is an experience that appears, then disappears, that comes and then goes. And something that can seem so abstract is so incredibly helpful to our lives, to our state of minds, and really to the world. You know, the more that we see this, the better the world is. The collective consciousness wakes up, and that's so important. And we can see that in the world right now. How what we project into the world, how we show up, can really make a difference. And it may not look like it, but it's like the ripple effect. The more we have these conversations, and this is why me and Jem do this, you know, we know the more that we have these conversations, the more people who we touch that then can touch other people with this understanding. The ripple effect of something like this can go so far. You know, it can really reach out to so many people, especially in a network like this. You know, sometimes we look and we've seen that maybe 250 people have listened to these calls. And if each one of those hears something and then says something to someone else, or two people, it's just, you know, that wave that begins of an understanding that frees people from their minds, that opens them up, that gets them to see something different and something deeper, and takes the pressure off them and leads to a better world. Because people that see this don't react in such a negative way. People that tend to see this, you know, you have your moments where you're caught up, but you're not blaming everybody. You're not so reactionary. You'll have a moment of insanity, but you'll come back to sanity really quickly. And I think just as we look in this world today and we see, you know, I've had messages from people today. Oh, I feel a bit caught up. I feel a bit anxious, and it really looked like it's what's going on in the world. And when I point them back and point out what's going on, they're like, okay, I get that. I see it's coming from me, and it's really out of my, like, what's going on out there is out of my control. But what is, I wouldn't say in my control, but appears to be in my control, is my state of mind and what I can see. And I think when we can dive into something like this and see something a bit more deeply and come from a more loving space, that's better for everybody. So I think more than ever today on this planet, with everything that's going on, this is an incredibly important conversation. And I've been talking for a while. My throat's actually going, so I'm going to ask Jem to come in.
Oh yeah, oh God, everything you said is so right. But does it not feel like when you said about, you know, today's so important, we've gone out of the fire into the frying pan, and I think is our experience supposed to be like that, to teach us things? You know, how have we just had restrictions lifted? Well, in our country, I always say, Canada, I always say that, but I know it's Canada, but it comes out wrong, and I was preempting, I was trying to preempt that. And they've just passed the Emergency Act. So it's the duality of everything is very, it's nice to be able to observe it. As you know, I would get so caught up. That's all I did, was I was constantly caught up. And it was sort of almost like, now it's like I've taken a pair of really tight shoes off that I was always wearing, that I didn't realize that I could unlace. Just going back to what you were saying about sort of how quickly things can happen, but how you can sort of realize, if I hadn't have been on this journey with you and what had happened, well, I wouldn't have been doing the spaces, so I wouldn't have lost the headphones, I wouldn't have been driving behind that arsehole. But what has happened is this, if I'd have stalled without any of this knowing, part of me would have probably doubted my driving ability. It's like, how has this happened for the first time when I'm 30? I wouldn't have connected the fact that it was thought, and it was because I was so wanting everything to go smoothly, and I didn't have my headphones. And now this, I believed in that moment that car was put there to piss me off. I believed it was put there by the universe, because the universe knew I couldn't find my headphones, and it knew that my chicken burger was probably getting cold. And these tiny things I managed to create into this, wow, the world's against me. And then as soon as I stalled, I kind of got there, but it wasn't till I got home and the cat brought me my headphones. And then I really laughed. And then 5 minutes later to find she's just for the first time been able to jump up on the kitchen work surface. The duality, like, I can see that so clearly now. Whereas before I would have been probably quite upset and maybe, like I said, doubted, am I actually as good a driver as I think I am? You know, maybe I'm just a typical woman driver and I steal cars now. Maybe this is what happens when you turn 30. You know, all of these possibilities are just, they're not there because I know it was all me, and it was my, I could have, I don't know whether I could or couldn't have stopped that run and that train, but luckily it lasted for 40 minutes. But it's comical that to be able to observe and just view situations, because they're not really my situations. And it's the minute you decide to get tied up in them, you know, the real sort of, I don't know if belligerence but is the right word, but when you think that you can actually do something about it, like that's when an issue becomes, because this is not, none of this is a problem. It's beautiful and it's happening because it's supposed to. It's only when our minds get involved and click onto things that it becomes not flowing, because we are sort of putting out obstacles because we're not just allowing the experience. So I've kind of doubled round on that whole experience now, and I can see it for what it is, but it would have been very different if I hadn't. And Molls, I'm going to say one of the things that is really important to me is we have these conversations like publicly. I was quite embarrassed at the beginning and I'm not now, but these small things that happen to us, they happen to everybody. God, they used to happen to me all the time, but on I feel like a 10 times level. And somebody, this is why it's important for me to say this, but somebody that I've been friends with for quite a long time, Molls has had a few interactions with them, and they've been nice and nasty to me over the years, in a friendship that's kind of always give and take. I feel like I've helped them a lot with different things with crypto and mental health, and they've sort of pushed back and have really been quite rude and horrible when I think back on it. And I've sort of allowed them and thought, well, you know, they're in a place of pain and I'm helping them. But yeah, quite recently something happened and they said to me, well, you know, what they said was, why are you doing this mental health space? Why do you think that you can help people when you're still fucked up? You've still got things that you deal with. And I thought to myself, well, actually, I've been honest about everything and I don't need to explain myself to them. But that was one, it was quite nasty. But two, I think it's really important here that me and Molls aren't coming from a place where like we are, wow, we are these shining white light, brilliant energy, nothing ever goes wrong. And we are real people. I'm only doing this because this has taught me so much. And I think it's so important. And we've not really done this, Molls, where we've just sort of spoken about things that have personally happened. We do sort of sometimes, but for everyone, this is not, nothing's a quick fix. But since I've been learning this, like today, there is no way that I would have been able to see that situation in the way that I have. And I'm really grateful, and I've learned from it that every day, probably every couple of hours, something happens and I can see why it's okay, and it just is okay. And it's, I suppose until it's happening, it's quite hard to explain. But yeah, I just wanted to say that, yeah, still have shitty times, but God, they're nowhere near like they were before, because now I actually know that it's all thought, and it's there's nothing wrong with me. I used to believe that the things that were happening that were bad or that were wrong was because I was innately broken or cursed or whatever. But now it's just so very different. But so just for me tonight is really important to say everyone's not okay at some point. I mean, I don't know if anybody's is always 100% okay, and I actually don't know if that would be an enjoyable experience, because how would you ever know that that's okay? So I feel like I'm blabbering on.
No, it's fine, darling. I'd say that we're always okay. We just have the appearance of not being okay. Okay, so even when we get caught up, we're okay. We're just having the appearance. Thought is telling us that we're not okay, but ultimately we really are. And what you have to remember is that our 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 worst day now is better than our best day when we were in our heads. You know, when we had our breakdowns or our anxieties or we were in our mental health issues, like that was a different ball game. Like my worst day now is nothing like that. You know, I'm much freer, and I do think that as time goes on, you'll see. You know, I've been around it a lot longer than you now, and it just gets better and better and better, and that's what surprises me. But it doesn't mean that you're exempt from feeling. It doesn't mean say you're exempt from having a bad day, but your experience of that bad day is different. Your experience of that bad day will just, you know, it might not even, it'll be a bad hour, it'll be a bad moment. You know, it just appears and then it disappears. And then what you have to remember, why this is challenging as well. So I'm not saying it's always easy to do this work. Why it's challenging is because we're up against the very thing that is causing the problem. So we're trying to teach people about thought when it's thought that is causing the problems. Does that make sense? We're trying to get people to understand the very thing that's stopping them understanding. So it really becomes tricky. It's like the mind is so powerful. It's almost going to try and get in the way of the understanding, because it's going to try and complicate it. And ultimately, the understanding is incredibly simple. If you're in complexity, you're in the intellect. You're not in the three principles. You're not in the understanding. What we're doing here is we're trying to teach you that what the intellect does. You know, show you it. This is how the intellect operates. This is what thought does. In seeing that, you can get freedom from it. A lot of other therapies are trying to go into thought and use the intellect to cure the intellect. It's like, look at what's the intellect doing? What's the intellect saying? What we're coming so much deeper. I want you to observe the intellect. See that it's making up stories. See that there isn't any truth to it. Because that's really where you're going to start to find freedom. You know, it's what's experience. Well, experience is coming from you. Experience is coming from thought. That's what we begin to see. We begin to see that life is made up of this energy of thought. You know, and the consciousness, these three principles. We have the energy of thought. We have consciousness, which is the observer. You know, we are that. We are mind, which is the energy behind life. So these energies that come through that create our experience really are what we need to touch, to heal, to feel the power, to know that really what's going on here is coming from us every moment of every second of every day. Okay, it's just a different way. It's examining the self. It's examining personal thought. It's seeing that thought is actually a gateway to a deeper experience of life. If we don't take it personally, now of course a lot of the time we're going to take our own thinking personally, because that's how it's going to appear. But if we can have these conversations and go a bit deeper, go to where thought is created, touch a space that's just before it, that's just got that something, the essence of the divine, the peace, the oneness. If we can just challenge our own thinking, we open a doorway, a gateway to that. Now that when we touch that, that's when the healing of the mind comes in. That's when the mind settles. You know, the mind has no power against truth. And what we're up against here is a mind that thinks it does. Okay, so the mind is always going to want to have the power. It's the ego. It believes it has the power. It believes it's in charge. It's creating the experience, okay? Or it owns the experience, but it's actually not the creator of the experience. So if you think that's the intellect's job, it wants to be in control. The intellect hates not being in control. You know, its very nature is want to be in control. It wants to have certainty. Now, if we look at the world today, what do we have? We've always lived in an uncertain world where we've had no control, but it's really got bloody obvious over the last couple of years. So what we're seeing here is that what the world's actually showing us is a deeper truth in some ways, because we're seeing that really we have no control, that the mind is just trying to find certainty in an uncertain world. It's trying to find security in the wrong places. Security does not exist outside of us. Security is what we find when we explore who we really are. When we see that our true being is always secure, it's always at peace, it's always content. But the thoughts that we've had, the stories that we've made up, the beliefs that we have will come along and create ideas and beliefs that say that that's not true, that will cover up that peace, that will cover up that love. And that's what we're always up against. And that's the simplicity of this. It's like, what's true, what isn't true? Well, what isn't true is probably what your mind is telling you. What is true is that mind is created from a deeper space. And when we observe and we go into that consciousness and that observation, then we have a different experience. Then we calm down. So for me and Gem, we get caught in the mind. We have the deeper experience. As soon as we see what's going on, that it's thoughts that's creating the experience, we settle down. And that's the truth for every human being. There isn't a person on this planet that isn't true for. We can all have that experience at any point, at any time. And yeah, Gem, I think I'm gonna part, because we're really getting on. It's already 10 to 9, and I think we also had some questions.
Yeah, I just looked at the time. I think we already had quite a long chat earlier too. And when me and Molls chat, it feels like, I don't know, we both speak quite quickly and we have so much to say. We have like 3 half conversations, then finish them off saying, oh, remember that. Da, 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 da. So yeah, it's been no interaction with anyone else today, but we do have some of the questions that was this from the tweet that I made about the within the Telegram group, Mo. Sorry, I'm having a blank.
Uh,
Um, I
wait.
about being happy, about deserving happiness.
Well, I think maybe we'll do that next week, actually, because we've gone way over already, haven't we, really?
We
Let me
have.
look on. I think I messaged you some things. Let me have a look.
You can tell we're organised, guys.
Brilliant. Oh, well, maybe I didn't message you some things.
Was it? We can quote Bitty if you want to talk about that,
Oh,
or there was a couple.
yeah,
Yeah, do you want to do that?
yeah, I'd love to.
Okay, so Bitty is one of our friends. We've known him for a long time, and we said that we would, and he said we could quote some of his tweets just to get a bit of sort of insight, and also I think a lot of other people are going to be feeling similar things. So yes, so Bitty, you should follow him as well. He's super funny. He's Bitcephus, I think that's how you pronounce it. So he said, mental health has been down bad this week, trying my hardest to make today a good one. Something I've really struggled with after college. Being an adult sucks sometimes. Thank you for all the kind responses. I really posted this to let those who aren't as vocal, let them know that they are not alone. And the interesting part is he says, we all have our demons that we're working to overcome. And I think, Moles, we've spoken about that a lot. And yeah, just to, if you could break that down and give an overview, because I believed I had demons, and that thought is awful. We've spoken with Sly about it before, and she was laughing, as you know, kind of embarrassing, but I feel like I'm cursed. And I think I know that you've definitely felt like that. I've felt like that. I'm sure many people have felt at certain times that they have something overhanging them, or there's something wrong. So I think that would be a great thing to end on, especially with what's going on in the world today.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things in what he said. So mental health has been down bad this week. Trying my hardest to make today a good one. Now, sometimes I don't think that's the most helpful thing to do, trying to make it a good one, trying to kind of fight against the feeling. Because what we're doing is almost fixing the feeling in place by saying it's real, because it feels, and I know it feels real. I'm not discounting a feeling here. I know when we're in it how powerful it can feel. But if I was having a bad day and what felt like a bad feeling, I wouldn't try my hardest to turn it into a good feeling or make it any different. What I would do is I would see that I would know that that feeling was coming from me, that that was on the table in this moment, and that actually that would pass at some point. Now, that doesn't mean to say I wouldn't do things to maybe try and have a good experience of the day, but it wouldn't be in a forced way. It would be if suddenly the idea came to me to go for a walk on the beach, I'd go for a walk on the beach. But it wouldn't be going for a walk on the beach thinking I'm going to make this a good day, or I'm going to change this feeling. It would just be, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I wouldn't attach so much meaning to how I felt. I would see that where it was coming from, I would understand what it was, and I would just get on with my day. And to some extent, that's what I did today. I had a feeling of anxiety, and I got on with my day, and at some point it passed. Now, I didn't try and change it. I didn't try and fix it. I didn't try and work out where. Well, I did try and work out where it came from for a moment until I realised that I was, what I was doing, and that was ridiculous. And but as soon as I saw what it was, it just began to dissipate. It went away. So it's a really subtle difference here, but the trying my hardest is going to create more pressure because you're adding more thought. So if it's thought feeling that's making you feel bad, adding more thought by trying to control the thought is going to make you feel worse. Okay. And the struggling is that I shouldn't feel this way. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to do something about it. And for anybody that's had mental health issues, we know that fight isn't really helping. It doesn't do anything. If anything, it can lock the feeling in place because we're saying this is true. This feeling means something. I've had this. I carry this with me. It says something about me. It's not truth. It's fleeting. It's passing. It's an energy. We all get those feelings, good and bad. And when he said, we all have our demons we're working to overcome. Now that's really interesting to me because it may look real, but a demon is a thought. A demon is your own thinking. That demon actually doesn't say anything about you. That demon is thought that comes and goes. Thought comes and goes. So change the word demon with thought. We all have our thoughts we're working to overcome. So when we look at thought from this understanding, we don't work to overcome them. We allow them to come, we allow them to go. We see that we're like a radio station and thought is a radio wave. We don't have to do anything with the demon. We don't have to do anything with the thought. It will come and go. So by saying that there's a demon there, can you see how you're creating a monster in your own head? And that monster is something that you have to fight. And then that fight, you can become even more depressed and more down because you're not going to win against it because it's a powerful energy. It's thought. Now, to see that thought isn't true, to see that the demon that appears to you as a demon is just made of thought, that it has no truth, it has no power unless you give it power, and that it's just made of thought and it will come and go, then can you see the difference there? You're not getting in a fight. You're not struggling against your own thinking. You're not having this make-believe demon that you've got to go up against and slay. You're not trying to fight thought with your own thought. Can you see how that was always a battle with yourself? And how can you win in a battle with yourself? It's such a fascinating thing to me to see that. And the freedom to see beyond it, the freedom to see that any dark thought or feeling that you have is it's just a thought feeling. It's neutral. It's dark and it has power because you've given it to it. Take away its power. Don't fight it. You don't have to fight anything. You can just let it go. It will just pass. And I think that's a really important thing to see because you step away from the struggle. You come back into the present. You see the truth of experience. You see the truth of thought. And life gets easier. Imagine you're fighting this demon that doesn't exist your whole life. What a waste. You know, how much freer can you be if you begin to see that the demon is thought of your own making? That you don't have to believe anymore. And they could just dissolve. Now, maybe that demon will still come to visit from time to time. But once you know what it's made of, it can't scare you anymore. So what was a demon that was incredibly scary becomes a thought that isn't. Like, can you see how different of an experience of the mind that is? How different of an experience of the areas of yourself that you thought were a problem or said something bad about you. That demon isn't true. It can just disappear. It was never there in the first place. We've made all our demons up. How wonderful to get free of that. That's this, again, back to the power of this conversation. That's what this does. It frees us from those illusory demons. We get to live again. We get to be present. We get to not be so scared of our own thinking. Now, scary thoughts will come from time to time. My scary thought is still heights. That's okay. It just appears real to me. I don't see it as a demon. I know it's thought, but for some reason, I can still get a reaction if I'm faced with heights. Well, there's no point me trying to fight it. What I hope is because of the work that I do and what I see in this understanding, one day that won't be there anymore. It will just fall away like many other things have. There's lots of things that look like demons to me that don't exist anymore because I've brought them up to the light of consciousness. They've been seen for what they are. They've been seen as thought. They've been seen as things that, oh, wow, they weren't true and they could never hurt me. But my relationship with them used to say that they could. Well, my relationship with that thinking has now changed. That's all that ever needs to happen for us to be okay, is for our relationship to our own thinking to change. Not for the world to change, not to slay a demon, not to be in a battle with ourselves, just for our relationship and understanding of ourselves to deepen. And that's the beauty of this. It's so simple and it's so easy. But as I said earlier, what we're up against, which makes it really, really interesting, is we're always up against our own thinking. We're trying to get you to understand the thing that's stopping you understanding. And that's the paradox of this. But I think if you hear something on these calls and these conversations, then and it sparks something, then you're ready. Explore. And as I said, me and Jem always talk about this at the end. There are many ways to explore it. It's coming on the calls. It's going online and finding something. Working with me or another 3 Principles coach 1-to-1. But stay in the conversation. Reading the books. There's a book list on our Medium article. But for me, that's the important thing. Stay in the conversation, because you never know when you're going to hear something that will change your life. And that's what happened for me. I didn't know that I was going to hear something that would change my life, but I did. And that's available again for every human being. And that's my hope for every human being, that we hear something that gives us an insight that changes us, that changes the world. And it can sound like idealistic, but why not? I know the power of this. So why not be idealistic about it? And just... it all starts with the individual. It starts with us. It starts with the individual having the insight, seeing that they're actually at one. There isn't an individual. There is just oneness. And then from there, the whole experience changes. Life changes. But we're on the hour now, so I'm going to hand over to Jem.
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, just the strangest thing happened again. I just said about Sly. Just as I said that, she commented and said, "Sorry, girls, I can't make it this week." There's been so many synchronicities.
Beautiful.
Oh, but Bitty, he will listen to this and hopefully I know he'll get something from that, but we love you.
Yeah. Actually, talking of Sly, I will she posted something today. Let me just find it quickly, and I think it was really beautiful.
This is like a voicemail service for our friends that aren't on today.
Yeah. So she posted this, which I thought was lovely, and it's a photo of concrete with the green sprig growing out. You know, where you see the concrete and nature has poked through. You know, it's managed to get through the concrete. You know, this is what we're actually. It's such a great metaphor for what we're talking about. Our concrete thoughts, our hardened thoughts that appear real, that look like we're really set in our ways, set in our thinking, set in who we are, and that thought becomes really solid and calcified. But an insight is the green shoot that pops up through the concrete. You know, nature will always have its way. And what she put is, today I met God in the cracks of a sidewalk. In all its grace, it replaces the rigid boundaries that hold it, the parameters that mould it, but it owns a strength that outgrows it all. I stopped to stare, reflecting there for a while, hoping, oh, this is interesting, hoping to reconcile my demons. And there's no demons there. So this is beautiful for Sly too. So she will listen to this and see, it all fits together. I love it. It all comes back to the point of really the experience of our experience of life. You know, we are all one. There is no separation, and I think sometimes we notice that and sometimes we don't, and I think it's so beautiful in those moments where we get to notice it. So thank you, everybody. I will hand over to Gem.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a really interesting day, and just the more I seem to personally just not, I think it's remembering more than anything.
Yeah.
It's just these small things, they're all adding up, and it's every day is a different journey. And even if I'm not doing very much for the day, just being is just really special now. I used to have to sort of take up a lot of time to be busy, and it's just to be peaceful is amazing. And hopefully for anyone that's on the call, you can begin the journey. Obviously, a lot of people that are in here, you're here every week, and we know that it's helping and doing something, and we really appreciate you. We wouldn't be doing this without you. So yeah, anything that you want to share with other people about something that might have helped you, that might help them, that's all we sort of really ask.
Oh, actually, I just want to butt in, because I'd really love the people that have been on the calls or been on previous calls, would absolutely love them to write something about their experience of being on the calls or listening to us, or something they've heard, because I'd like to put another article together. And I want to quote some of you guys in it about how it's helped you or what you've heard from what we've said. So I'd really appreciate that. Thank you. And also, don't forget that we're going to end with the theme tune after you've done your kind of your little bit at the end, Gem.
Yeah, and I just want to mention, though, I put out a tweet earlier about sort of not feeling worthy of love, and I think we're going to do that whole big subject next week.
Yeah.
Steve is in here, and I did say that I would speak about what you said today, so I just want to apologize, and this is how we market people, so you have to come to next week. but definitely it was really beautiful what you said, and I haven't forgotten you. Also, Moses, I saw your request, and we haven't forgotten you, but it's just it's late, and me and Molls want to fuck off and go to bed, so no, it's been really, really, really great and really wonderful tonight. There is a Medium article that I'm going to share in a minute, just to remind you all about exactly sort of what we're doing and why. But yeah, the most important thing is if you can just share what we're doing. I feel like it's making a big difference to me, and I know it is to others. So yes, join our Telegram group, which is t.me/unminding. We're always there. And we're very lucky. A friend of Unminding, Carl, has made us some music. So we're going to play that, and we will see you all next week. Lots of love.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.